Hi, my name's James Thorpe. I'm the editor of International Security Journal, and I'm here at the Olympia in London at International Security Expo 2022 with Andrew Farquhar, UK Managing Director of GardaWorld. How are you, Andrew?
Very well, thanks, and pleased to be here at the Expo.
Brilliant. And in your role currently, what have you seen as the major catalyst of change currently in the industry, and particularly in the Europe, Middle East and Africa regions?
Well, an awful lot has changed, and specifically, some of the unrest, the political and the social unrest has been significant. And that's given us some real challenges on the security side, because you now have to understand better the environment within which you're operating. And sometimes to understand really what's going on the ground is quite difficult. So I think that social and economic unrest is one thing. And then of course you have in some of the wider theatres of operation, you have the insurgent issues. So for example in Mozambique there's been an insurgent requirement. And those are perhaps the more traditional risks and threats that security companies deal with, but they're still there and they're underlying. And when they happen very quickly and they tend to be quite unpleasant.
Yeah. And obviously that's where GardaWorld will come into it. And what makes you stand out in the EMEA market specifically?
Well, I think we have a very good understanding because of our size and our footprint across these countries about what's going on. And so we're able to transfer our understanding into our security activity. In addition to that, we're using quite a lot of higher technology these days, and some of that is in the electronic spectrum, and we look and understand better behaviours, and we are able, I think, to not forecast, that would be too much of an exaggeration, but to better understand what's going on. And that ability to understand the environment and the situation means we can better apply our resources. So we'll put them in the right place at the right time, rather than having to spread them thinly across the whole piece. So that intelligent understanding of the situation.
Brilliant. And obviously you talk about applying that properly. I mean, for GardaWorld, you've been involved a lot recently in humanitarian efforts. Can you tell us a little bit more about that as well, please?
Well, one of the things we like to think we can contribute as a security company isn't just security to our client and not just security to the communities within which we operate, but also to the humanitarian aspects. And by that, I mean we are able to support communities. So for example, if there's an earthquake, which have been recently in the DRC, we were able to support that community during that earthquake recovery phase. And similarly, when there was an insurgency in Mozambique, up in the Cabo Delgado area, we were able to evacuate some of the local population, which meant that they were away from harm. And indeed, we actually transported many of them in our own landing craft to a place of safety. So those sort of pieces, and if you then couple that to a strategic humanitarian effort, if you like, in Afghanistan to evacuate people from there, and it wasn't as successful as large as we would have liked it, but from a GardaWorld perspective, certainly we got as many of our people out as we could in the time available. So those sort of humanitarian activities are part and parcel of what we now do as a security company. And it ties in very nicely, we think, with our work in local communities, supporting education, supporting gender equality and these other wider community activities.
Fantastic. And moving to security again quickly, what would you kind of say are the key markets which can expect the most growth really and have the highest security requirement coming up?
Well, I think if we look at some of the old ones which are returning, it's very interesting of what's happening in Afghanistan at the moment. And I'm not going to go into any detail because there are some charged emotions about Afghanistan and the regime. But I think that market will quietly return, maybe not to the size it was, but it will return. But other than that, of course, Eastern Europe is certainly the area that we're looking at. Because firstly, there is the constant threat from clandestine operations run by states, and one state in particular. So there's a need to secure our clients as they move around and operate in Eastern Europe generally. And then in the recovery phase, there'll be an awful lot of weaponry. There'll be an awful lot of unexploded ordnance. There'll be people carrying weapons who perhaps are desperate, who perhaps have PTSD, and our clients will need to be shielded from all those security issues.
Brilliant. And kind of personally, what's been your proudest moment at GardaWorld since you've been there?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think from my perspective, I've worked with quite a few governments and we do a lot of diplomatic security.
Yeah.
So I think my proudest achievement, if you like, is growing our diplomatic footprint and growing the base we have with governments, and particularly with the British government, where we do a lot of work. And I think that, to me, being able to move diplomats, people who are going to hopefully improve the political and the cultural ways around the world, I think that, to me, has been a good thing to do.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much indeed.